My name is Sarah Thompson. I'm 36 years old, a single mom living in Naperville, Illinois, a beautiful suburb near Chicago, where everyone takes pride in the clean neighborhoods, great schools, and tight-knit community. After my divorce 6 years ago, my son Ethan, now 11, and I live in a small 2-story house with a backyard, just big enough for a few rose bushes and an old swing set. I work remotely in marketing for an advertising firm, so I can be flexible with dropping Ethan off and picking him up from school and spending real time with him. Our life is simple but stable. At least it was until last Christmas Eve. Every year when the holiday season arrives, Naperville turns into a living postcard. The suburban streets light up with thousands of Christmas lights. People compete to decorate their homes, roofs covered in synchronized LED lights that blink to music, front yards with giant inflatable Santa Clauses, reindeer, and even houses themed around Taylor Swift that go viral on social media. Ethan and I usually spend one evening driving slowly through streets like Gartner Road or the areas near the Riverwalk to see Naper Lights, the free light display put on by the Rotary Club, with over 250,000 bulbs lighting up the river, the covered bridge, and huge teddy bear sculptures perfect for photos. This year, like always, Ethan and I kicked off Christmas Eve with our traditional lights tour. We sat in my old SUV, radio tuned to All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey, the song Ethan jokingly calls the one mom sings the loudest in the world. Light snow fell outside the window, dusting the rooftops in a thin layer of white. Ethan pressed his nose to the glass, cheering every time we passed an especially beautiful house. Some had full light tunnels, others sync their displays to the beat of Jingle Bell Rock. "Mom, can we do this next year too?" he asked, eyes shining. I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Sure, if Mom wins the lottery, definitely." After the light tour, we drove to my parents' house, Richard and Diane Thompson's place, in a more upscale part of Naperville. Their home is a large colonial-style house with a wide front yard, a towering Christmas tree visible through the windows, and elegant white lights wrapped around the fence. My mom, Diane, always prides herself on having the most perfectly decorated house on the block. She loves bragging to neighbors and her church group friends that their home is the gold standard of Christmas. My dad, Richard, is quieter, a retired engineer who prefers to control things through money, from the family trust to helping his kids with investments that always come with strings. When we arrived, the atmosphere was already buzzing. My sister Megan had gotten there earlier with her husband and their 3 kids, the perfect grandchildren my mom constantly brags about. Megan is the golden child, happily married, husband a lawyer, beautiful home in downtown Chicago, and always knows how to stay in my parents' good graces. My brother Ryan arrived a little late, alone since he's separated from his wife. He's easygoing and funny, but always avoids conflict, the kind of guy who smooths over every family argument with a smile and a joke. Ethan bolted inside as soon as the car stopped, excited to play with his cousins from Megan's side. The kids laughed and ran around the massive Christmas tree in the living room, where presents were piled high underneath. The smell of roasting turkey wafted from the kitchen, mixed with cinnamon from the Yankee candles my mom loves. Diane bustled around directing everyone. "Megan, help Mom set the table. Sarah, keep an eye on Ethan. Don't let him make a mess." She's always like that, controlling every detail, and intentionally or not, always favoring Megan's family. We sat down at the large dining room table with red and white tablecloths, fine china, and an Advent candle centerpiece. A classic Midwest Christmas dinner. Golden turkey, stuffing with onions and celery, green bean casserole with crispy fried onions, creamy mashed potatoes, homemade cranberry sauce, and sweet cornbread. Everyone praised Diane endlessly. "Diane, this turkey is perfect." Words from a neighbor invited as usual to fill out the family vibe. Megan sat in the center, her husband David telling funny stories about his law practice in Chicago, while their 3 kids ate politely and giggled occasionally. Ethan sat next to me, trying to join in by talking about his school soccer game, but his eyes kept drifting to the dessert table in the corner, where there were pumpkin pies, my mom's famous pecan pie,
snowman-shaped cookies, and chocolate fudge. I looked at my son, my heart full. Ethan is everything to me, an intelligent boy who loves soccer and Lego, always trying to make me proud despite the challenges of single mom life. But deep down, I knew tonight wouldn't be perfect on the surface.
This family has never truly seen Ethan and me as core family. We've always been on the edge because I'm divorced, because I'm independent, because I don't need the financial help from my parents like Megan does. And then the incident happened at the dessert table. The Christmas dinner went smoothly as always, at least on the surface. We sat around the large dining room table under the crystal chandelier and fairy lights strung around the windows. The smell of golden roasted turkey with crispy skin filled the house, mixed with herbs from the stuffing, my mom's proud bread stuffing with onions, celery, and sage, made from her grandmother's recipe. Next to it were plates of green bean casserole topped with crunchy fried onions, smooth mashed potatoes drowned in brown gravy, bright red homemade cranberry sauce, and warm sweet cornbread.
Everyone kept complimenting Diane. "Diane, the turkey is perfect this year." Words from a neighbor invited as usual to round out the family atmosphere. Megan sat in the prime spot, her husband David telling funny stories about his lawyer work in Chicago, while their 3 kids ate politely and giggled now and then. Ethan sat next to me, trying to contribute by talking about his school soccer game, but his eyes kept sneaking toward the dessert table in the corner. On it were classic Midwest Christmas desserts, 2 pre-cut pumpkin pies with thick whipped cream, a glistening pecan pie with caramelized nuts. My mom's signature dish she always boasts is better than any bakery in Naperville, snowman and tree-shaped cookies, and neatly cut chocolate fudge. After everyone was full and started clearing plates, the kids rushed to the dessert table.
Megan's grandchildren got there first, laughing as they grabbed seconds and thirds. Ethan hung back shyly, eyes sparkling as he stared at the pecan pie, his favorite since he was little. Only one slice remained, the largest and most perfect, with shiny filling. Diane walked over, knife in one hand, plate in the other. She looked straight at Ethan. He was standing right by the table, mouth slightly open in anticipation. Then turned to the whole room, voice sweet but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Well, only real family gets the last slice of my famous pecan pie." She laughed loudly, as if it was a harmless joke, then placed the final slice on the plate of Megan's oldest grandson, a 9-year-old who had his hand raised for more. Megan's kids giggled. David clapped playfully. "That's right, Grandma's rules." The room fell silent for a brief second. Then conversation resumed as if nothing happened. Only I felt the sudden heaviness. Ethan stood frozen, a forced smile on his lips, then whispered to me, "I'm not hungry anymore, Mom." His eyes glistened, but he swallowed his tears, turning away to pretend to play with a toy under the tree. In that moment, everything slowed. I heard Megan's laughter, Diane praising the grandchildren for being so polite and grateful, Richard quietly refilling wine glasses. But I saw it clearly. This wasn't the first time. This was the first time they said it outright in front of my child. All these years, I had swallowed it. The times Ethan's birthday was skipped because Grandma and Grandpa were busy at the lake house with Megan's family. The times Diane posted photo albums of grandkids at Christmas with only Megan's kids and captions like, "My beautiful grandchildren." The times Richard suggested let Dad co-sign to help with taxes, but really wanted control. The blood in my veins boiled. I wanted to scream, flip the table, point at my mother and ask if she realized how much she had just hurt an 11-year-old. But I didn't. I had learned from childhood that making a scene only made me the drama queen in this family's eyes. Instead, I took a deep breath, stood up, smiled politely, and said, "Ethan, grab your coat, buddy. Time to head home. Mom's tired." Diane spun around, voice fake sweet. "Leaving so early? We haven't even opened presents." I looked her straight in the eye. "We have everything we need at home." Then I took Ethan's hand and led him to the door. On the porch, Diane called after us, "Sarah, what are you upset about? It was just a slice of pie." I didn't turn back, just closed the door behind us, leaving the smell of turkey, laughter, and Christmas lights inside. On the drive home, the car was heavy with silence. Snow fell thicker, covering the windshield in white. Ethan sat curled in his seat, staring out the window, drawing small circles in the fogged glass with his finger. I turned on the radio, but "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas" only made the air more choked. After a long while, my son's tiny voice broke the darkness. "Mom, are we not real family?" My heart shattered. I pulled over to the side of the road, turned off the engine, and turned to hug him tightly.
Ethan didn't sob loudly, just trembled in my arms. "We are family, sweetheart," I whispered. "We are the realest family there is. What Grandma said, that was wrong. Not you. Never you." He nodded, but I knew the wound was deep. On what should have been the warmest night of the year, my son had just been taught he didn't fully belong in the place that was supposed to be safest. When we got to our little house, the Christmas lights from neighbors still twinkled through the windows, but now they only made me ache more. I hung up Ethan's coat, trying to keep my voice normal. "Want Mom to make hot chocolate with extra marshmallows?" Ethan nodded weakly. I knew tonight was only the beginning. The real storm would come tomorrow morning, when Diane realized that this time I wasn't swallowing it anymore. When we got home, Naperville was already quiet under the Christmas night. Light snow fell, dusting the roof of our small 2-story house in a thin white layer. Neighbor Christmas lights still blinked through the windows, but now they only made me feel more alone. I parked in the garage, turned off the engine, and turned to Ethan. He was still sitting quietly, eyes red, but no tears. "We're home, sweetheart," I said softly, trying not to let my voice shake. Ethan nodded and got out without a word. We hung our coats on the old hooks by the door. I turned on the kitchen lights and the small gas fireplace in the living room, the only thing that made the house warm on cold Illinois nights. The faint scent of pine from the small tree we decorated ourselves last weekend lingered, but now it only reminded me of the difference between our home and my parents'. Here, there was no crystal chandelier or piles of presents, just a tree Ethan's height with handmade ornaments and cheap Target lights. "Want Mom to make hot chocolate?" I asked, trying to sound cheerful. Ethan nodded weakly. "With lots of marshmallows, please, Mom." I smiled, kissed his forehead, and went to the kitchen. I warmed milk on the gas stove, added Hershey's cocoa powder, a bit of vanilla extract, and brown sugar, the recipe I learned from my mom years ago, before everything changed. I poured it into 2 big mugs, topped them with piles of mini marshmallows that Ethan loves because they melt into a frothy white layer. I even grabbed the last box of Oreos from the cabinet and arranged them on a plate like a little midnight party. We sat on the old sofa, wrapped in the same plaid blanket I bought at a garage sale last year. I turned on Netflix and chose Elf, Ethan's favorite Christmas movie, because he loves Buddy's innocence and the New York snow scenes. The screen lit up with cheerful music. Santa Claus is coming to town, but the room still felt heavy. Ethan held his mug, blowing gently, but didn't drink right away. He stared at the melting marshmallows. After a while, as Buddy sang loudly in the forest, Ethan turned to me, voice tiny. "Mom, when Grandma said only real family, does she think I'm not really her grandson?" My heart clenched. I paused the movie, set my mug down, and pulled him close. Ethan nestled in, head on my shoulder like when he was little. "No, sweetheart," I said, stroking his hair. "We are the realest family. Family isn't just about blood. It's about people who love, respect, and protect each other. What Grandma said was wrong, and I'm sorry you had to hear it." Ethan was quiet for a moment, then asked, "But why did she give seconds to my cousins and not me?" I took a deep breath. At that moment, childhood memories flooded back like an avalanche. I remembered Christmases long ago when I was a 12-year-old girl sitting at the edge of the table, watching Megan, my sister 3 years older, always get praised, always get the bigger slice, the more expensive gift. Diane would hint, "Megan is grateful, so she gets more," while I was told, "Don't be demanding, you have enough."
My dad, Richard, was silent, but always prioritized Megan in college funds or family trips. I used to swallow tears, telling myself it was my fault, I wasn't good enough. But now, seeing Ethan go through the same, I couldn't swallow anymore. I felt like you once, I told him gently. When I was little, Mom always favored Aunt Megan. I thought it was my fault. I wasn't obedient enough, not good enough. But now I understand. It's not the child's fault. It's how some adults use love to control. They give more to make one person feel indebted and less to make the other afraid of losing it. But real family doesn't do that. Real family makes you feel safe and loved unconditionally. Ethan looked up at me, eyes still red. So, are we still Grandma and Grandpa's family? I smiled sadly. Blood, yes, but real family is earned every day through actions. If someone hurts you and doesn't apologize or change, I will protect you from them, no matter who they are. Ethan nodded, slower this time, as if digesting every word. He took a sip of hot chocolate, marshmallow foam on his lip. I like Mom's hot chocolate better than Grandma's pecan pie. We finished Elf. Ethan giggled when Buddy ate spaghetti with maple syrup and gradually relaxed in my arms. When the movie ended, he had fallen asleep, head on my chest, breathing steady. I carried him upstairs. Ethan is heavy now, but I still wanted to hold him like when he was small. I tucked him in, pulled up the warm blanket, kissed his forehead. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Mom's always here. Afterward, I went downstairs and sat alone in the dark living room, only the small tree lights twinkling. I held my cooled hot chocolate, staring out at the falling snow. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for leaving my parents' house early. Instead, there was a clear resolve. I have to protect Ethan. Not by teaching him to endure like I did, but by setting boundaries. If Diane and Richard can't respect my son, they won't have access to him anymore. That's not selfish, it's being a mother. That Christmas night, amid the cold Illinois wind, I knew everything was about to change. And this time, I was ready. The next morning, December 26th, I woke earlier than usual. Weak winter sunlight filtered through the bedroom curtains, shining on the old wooden floor. Ethan was still sleeping soundly in his room, face peaceful after a long night. I went downstairs, brewed coffee in my favorite French press, trying to enjoy the rare quiet of the day after Christmas. Outside, light snow continued, blanketing our small backyard in white. Naperville was still, only a few snowplows rumbling down the streets. I picked up my phone to check, and my heart tightened. The screen showed over 30 missed calls from my mom, Diane, most from midnight to early morning. There was also one new voicemail. I hesitated, then played it, putting it on speaker so the sound of boiling coffee could drown some of it. Diane's voice came through, not the usual sweet tone, but panicked, almost shrill. Sarah, you have to call Mom back right now. The lawyer just called. They're sealing everything, all the paperwork for the trust and lake house. If we don't act fast, we could lose the Lake Geneva house, lose part of retirement. You can't just ignore this. You're part of this family, whether you like it or not. I stood frozen by the kitchen counter, coffee dripping slowly into the pot. Not one word about Ethan. No, I'm sorry for hurting him. No, I'm worried about how Ethan is. Just money, assets, trust, lake house, the summer home on Lake Geneva, Wisconsin that the family has been proud of since I was little. The place we used to boat, roast marshmallows, watch 4th of July fireworks. The place that, now I knew clearly, was really only for real family. Megan sighed. Memories rushed back like a cold wave. I remembered a few years ago, right after my divorce, when I was struggling with the mortgage on this little house. Richard called me into his home office, the oak-paneled room with bookshelves full of golf trophies and family photos, more with Megan than me. He placed a thick stack of papers in front of me. Dad wants to help you. Let Dad co-own part of the Lake House LLC and add your name to the trust. It'll be better for taxes, for Ethan's future, for family, Sarah. We have to keep everything in the family. Back then, I was naive, still wanting to prove I was grateful, so I signed. I never imagined it was just his way of control.
From then on, every time I refused his financial advice, like not letting him manage Ethan's college fund, he'd hint, "You forget Dad's holding most of the assets for you?" Now, when I walked out of the party without permission, they panicked not because they were losing me, but because they feared losing free access to my signature for the lake house. I set the phone down, hands shaking slightly. The coffee was ready, but I couldn't drink. I texted Diane briefly. "You made it clear last night that Ethan and I aren't real family, so let your lawyer handle the house and retirement. Don't call again." I sent it, then blocked her number. Not forever, just long enough for my head to clear.
Less than an hour later, the phone buzzed again, this time from Ryan, my brother. He rarely calls unless it's something big or my parents asked him to mediate. I sighed and answered. "Sarah, what the hell is going on?" Ryan's voice was half worried, half confused. "Mom's freaking out here. Dad's pacing, talking about lawyers and ungrateful kids. Mom said Ethan was difficult last night, then you left early. Everyone's gossiping." I told him everything, from the last slice of pecan pie, Diane's words, to Ethan's hurt eyes. Ryan was silent on the other end, just heavy breathing. I saw it," he finally admitted. "I thought Mom was just joking, like always. She says stuff like that." "But not to an 11-year-old child, Ryan," I said, calm but firm. "Not in front of the whole family and neighbors, and definitely not when she only cares about the lake house, not her grandson."
Ryan went quiet again. I knew he was struggling. He's always the peacemaker, the one who lets things go to keep everything normal. But this time, I heard something different in his voice. "Yeah, I guess Mom went too far. Let me talk to her." "Don't," I cut in. "This time, I don't need fixing. I just need her to stop using family as a weapon. If Ethan and I aren't family at the dessert table, we're not family at the bank either." Ryan sighed. "Okay, I get it. Give me time." We hung up. I sat at the kitchen table, looking out at the snowy yard. Ethan was still asleep. I knew the storm wasn't over, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was standing firm, no longer bowing. After the second call with Ryan, I thought I'd have a few days of peace to breathe. Ethan woke late, we had breakfast with pancakes from Mix, and watched Elf again. He laughed more, but I still saw him hiding sadness behind innocent questions like, "Do we have to go to Grandma and Grandpa's next year, Mom?" I hugged him, promised next year we'd have our own Christmas, maybe drive to Chicago to see the zoo lights, or just stay home baking cookies. But peace didn't last. That afternoon, while Ethan was playing Fortnite upstairs, I scrolled Facebook over tea, and there it was, Diane's newest post, posted just hours earlier at the top of my feed because she tagged the family group and church friends. The photo showed my parents' living room, the huge tree sparkling with white lights, the table still full of leftovers from last night, turkey carcass, leftover green bean casserole, and the dessert table now just scraps. In the center was Megan, smiling radiantly beside her husband David, their 3 kids in matching red and white pajamas, Richard and Diane standing behind with arms around the grandkids. No me, no Ethan. The angle clearly taken after we left. They waited until we were gone to pose like the party was still perfect. Diane's caption made me choke. "Feeling so incredibly blessed with family this Christmas. Nothing matters more than these moments with the ones you love most. Heart, tree, hashtag Thompson Family Christmas, hashtag Grateful Heart, hashtag Family First." Dozens of likes and comments poured in immediately. Neighbor Mrs. Henderson, "What a beautiful family. You're all so blessed." A church group friend, "Diane, your home always looks like a Hallmark movie." Someone even asked, "Where's Sarah and little Ethan? Hope they're in another photo." But Diane hadn't replied. I zoomed in, searching every pixel for a trace of us in the corner. Nothing. We were deliberately cut from her perfect Christmas story. I heard her voice again in my head. Only real family gets the last slice. Now it was clear. Real family, in Diane's eyes, only included those who didn't challenge her. My phone buzzed. Text from Megan.
Hey sis, Mom said you left early because Ethan was being difficult. Everything okay? You kinda made it awkward for everyone. I read it over and over. Being difficult. As if my 11-year-old was the troublemaker for standing there watching the last slice. I took a deep breath and typed back. You were there, Megan. You saw Mom take the last slice of pecan pie, look right at Ethan and say, only real family gets the last slice. Then give it to your kids for seconds. He was hurt. I left to protect him.
Megan's typing appeared for a long time, disappeared, reappeared. Finally, OMG, Sarah, you're totally overreacting. It was just Mom's weird sense of humor. You know how she is. She didn't mean it like that. Don't blow up the whole family over one dumb comment. I laughed bitterly. One dumb comment. To Megan, it was always one comment, one joke, one time. She grew up the golden child, the one praised at every dinner party, the one rescued no matter what. I grew up as the example of what not to be. I didn't argue. I replied, if it was a joke, it was at my son's expense, and I'm done letting them laugh. Then I set my phone down and pulled out an old notebook from the kitchen drawer, the one for grocery lists and half-finished resolutions. On the first blank page, I wrote the date, December 26th. Then I started listing.
Ethan's 8th birthday. Grandparents cancel plans because unexpected lake house trip with Megan's family. Gift mailed a week late. Christmas when Ethan was 6. Diane posted album, Grandkids at Christmas. Only Megan's kids. Caption, my beautiful grandchildren. Last summer, Richard offered to help pay for Ethan's camp, but only if he managed the 529 plan. I refused. He was angry for a month. Easter, Diane hosted egg hunt in backyard. Only invited Megan's family because the grandkids are older and play better. Ethan asked why he wasn't invited. She said, next time. After my divorce, Diane told church group, Sarah's always too independent, doesn't listen, that's why it happened. The more I wrote, the clearer the pattern. It wasn't one time, it was a lifetime. I no longer felt like I was overreacting. I was just seeing the truth. That night, Ryan called again. This time his voice was different, no immediate defense. I just got back from Mom and Dad's, he said. Mom's crying, saying you blocked her. Dad's reading lawyer papers. I asked about last night. Mom said it was just a joke, that Ethan's too sensitive. Ryan, would you be okay if someone told your kid they weren't real family in front of everyone? I asked. Long silence. Then Ryan sighed. No. I guess I let this stuff slide too long. Mom said things like that to me growing up. I got used to it. But hearing you tell it about Ethan, it's not okay, especially with a kid. It's not just last night, I said. It's a pattern. Mom posted the Christmas photo, Ryan. Taken after we left, completely cut us out. Caption, blessed with family. Ryan silent again. I saw the post. I didn't realize you and Ethan weren't in it until you said it. God, it's deeper than I thought. Yes, I said. If Ethan and I aren't family at the dessert table, we're not family when it comes to the trust or lake house. I don't want to take anything from anyone, Ryan. I just don't want my name used as a control tool anymore. Ryan sighed heavily. Give me time to think. I need to talk seriously with Mom and Dad, and maybe a lawyer of my own. I hung up, sitting in the dark living room. Ethan was asleep. Snow still fell outside. For the first time, I didn't feel alone in this fight. Ryan was waking up, slowly, but waking, and I knew this was only the beginning. After the second call with Ryan, he suggested meeting in person. Can't talk about this over the phone, Sarah. We need to meet. Starbucks in downtown Naperville, tomorrow afternoon, 3 o'clock. I agreed immediately. I needed to look him in the eye to know where he stood. The next afternoon, Naperville was bitterly cold. Temperatures below zero, wind from Lake Michigan turning roads into ice. I wore my puffy coat, scarf, and dropped Ethan at trusted neighbor Mrs. Henderson's, the one who commented on Facebook asking where Ethan was. Driving downtown, I passed streets still strung with lingering Christmas lights, but now they only reminded me of that night. The Starbucks at Washington and Jefferson was packed post-holiday. Remote workers on laptops, moms with strollers sipping lattes, cinnamon and gingerbread syrup in the air.
Ryan was already there, in the farthest corner near the fake gas fireplace, a large black coffee in front of him, and my usual waiting, venti blonde roast with 1 espresso shot, my college favorite. He stood for a quick, awkward brother-sister hug. "You look exhausted," he said as we sat. I gave a wry smile. "Thanks for the compliment. You, sleep okay after being at Mom and Dad's?" Ryan stirred his coffee, staring out at the heavy snow. "No, I thought all night. I asked Dad about the lawyer stuff, and I heard things that made me sick." He lowered his voice. "Dad called the family lawyer right after Christmas, yesterday morning. He wanted to restructure the trust in Lake House LLC to protect certain people. His exact words. The lawyer said nothing major can happen without all owner signatures."
And your name is still co-owner on part of the LLC from 2019, when you helped pay for the new roof and dock. I remembered that year clearly. The lake house was old, roof leaked after a big storm, repairs cost nearly $50,000. I had just gotten a work bonus and was trying to prove I was still part of the family post-divorce, so I contributed a large amount. Richard said, "Let Mom and Dad be primary owners. You just co-sign for better taxes." I signed without reading closely, thinking it was helping family. "Now they're panicking," Ryan continued. "Without your signature, they can't refinance for early retirement money, can't transfer most to Megan's family without heavy taxes, can't even sell if they want. The lawyer said they have to seal paperwork temporarily to avoid risks, meaning freeze everything until consensus." That's why Mom called you 30 times, not to apologize to Ethan, but because she feared losing control of the lake house. I held my coffee but didn't drink, hands ice cold. So they're not worried about losing me. They're worried about losing my signature. Ryan nodded, face red with rare anger. "Exactly. Dad said, Sarah's always the most independent, she'd never go this far. They thought you'd stay on the outside forever, pay when needed, sign when needed, but never touch the trust. They had me and Megan on the hook. Me always giving in, Megan loving the favoritism." I looked at my brother, the 39-year-old man separated from his wife, living alone in a nearby condo, always the peacemaker at every holiday. "Ryan, do you see the pattern? They only call me when they need something. After my divorce, they didn't ask if I was okay, just offered financial help, with conditions." Ethan's birthday skipped for lake house trips with Megan's family. And Christmas Eve, they said outright in front of my son he wasn't real family. Ryan looked down, gripping his paper cup tightly. "I see it now. I let it go too long. I thought it was just Mom's way, that she loved in her weird way. But when you told me about Ethan standing there, I imagined someone saying that to my kid. I'd lose it." He looked up, eyes red. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner." I put my hand on his. "You see it now, and I need your help. I don't want to steal anything. I just want my part, and eventually Ethan's separated. No strings, no leverage. If I'm not family at the dessert table, I'm not family at the trust table." Ryan looked at me long, then nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll help. I know a good lawyer in Chicago, not Mom and Dad's, specializes in trusts and estate planning." "I'll call him. Set up a meeting for both of us. We need to know exactly your rights, and mine too, because I'm tired of pretending everything's normal." I exhaled, feeling relief for the first time in days. "Thank you." Ryan gave a sad smile. "No problem. I should be thanking you for finally opening my eyes." We sat a bit longer, talking about Ethan, New Year plans, avoiding Mom and Dad. When we left, snow had stopped, sky gray, but not as heavy. Driving home, I turned on the radio, Let It Snow playing. I smiled. The storm wasn't over, but I wasn't facing it alone anymore. 2 days after the Starbucks meeting with Ryan, I got the email that knotted my stomach from the subject line alone. Family trust and property concerns, sent from the family lawyer's office, Lawrence and Associates in downtown Chicago. I was at the kitchen table, Ethan next to me doing science homework, so I opened it privately on my laptop. The letter started polite but cold. "Dear Sarah,
Your parents have informed us that you may be considering alterations to your participation in the Thompson Family Trust and related LLC interests, particularly the Lake Geneva property. Then a long paragraph about potential tax implications, unintended penalties under current IRS guidelines, complications to long-term estate planning, and how sudden changes could jeopardize your parents' retirement security. There was even a line that made me laugh bitterly. Your parents have always acted with your and your son's financial well-being at heart. I read it twice. Not one word about Christmas, about Ethan, about Diane's comment. Just veiled threats. If I didn't cooperate, everything would get complicated, expensive, and I'd be the one harming the family's future. They were trying to make me feel like an ungrateful daughter, irresponsible. I forwarded it immediately to the lawyer Ryan recommended, Daniel Torres, trust and estate specialist at an independent firm. I added a short note. Is any of this real or just pressure? Mr. Torres called back in just 2 hours, his voice calm, professional. Some is technically true, major trust restructuring can have tax consequences, but this letter is incomplete. A decent lawyer would contact you directly to discuss options, not use your parents' letter to scare you. And most importantly, because your name is co-owner on the Lake House LLC, no major change can happen without your written consent. They're obligated to include you. If they're this desperate, it means you should definitely ask more questions. I exhaled. I wasn't crazy. I was just inconvenient to people used to getting their way. With Mr. Torres's guidance, I drafted a response, not as the scared daughter, but as a legal co-owner and beneficiary. Subject: formal response regarding Thompson Family Trust and Lake Geneva LLC. Dear Mr. Lawrence, I am in receipt of your email dated December 28th and am fully aware of my legal interests in the Lake Geneva property and related entities. I do not consent to any sale, lease, refinance, transfer, or restructuring of these assets without my explicit written approval. Additionally, I request a complete accounting of all transactions, contributions, distributions, and valuations related to the property and trust for the past 5 years, sent directly to me or my counsel.
Going forward, all communication regarding my interests should be directed to me or my attorney, Daniel Torres, Esquire.
Thank you. Sarah Thompson. I read it 3 times, heart pounding, but hands steady. I hit send, then closed the laptop like it was any normal day, made dinner for Ethan, helped with homework, read bedtime stories. Less than an hour later, the phone buzzed. Voicemail from my parents' landline, the one I hadn't blocked thinking they wouldn't use it. I played it on low speaker. Diane's voice, high and trembling. Sarah, what are you doing? Your father is beside himself. The lawyer says you're making everything complicated. Do you have any idea what you're risking? The lake house is our retirement.
We spent our whole lives building something to leave for you kids, and this is how you repay us? Freezing everything because the boy had to hear no once? She paused, voice sharpening. Ethan needs to learn respect for adults, Sarah. You're too soft on him. That's why we sometimes have to be firm, so he doesn't turn out like you. I stood, frozen in the kitchen, wooden spoon in hand, stirring pasta. She didn't say Ethan's name with any remorse. No, I'm sorry I humiliated your child. Just blame, and that final knife, so he doesn't turn out like you. Independent, divorced, unwilling to bow. I replayed it once to be sure, then transcribed it word for word and sent it to Ryan via text, no comment. Ryan called immediately. I heard him driving. Did she really say that? His voice shook with anger. She turned this into a respect lesson, while she's the one who hurt a child. Yes, I said, and she only panicked when she thought she'd lose the lake house, not when she hurt her grandson. Ryan exhaled heavily. I'm not going over there for a while. I can't keep pretending this is normal. They called me twice this morning to complain about you, not once to ask how Ethan is. Good, I said. Let them sit with themselves for a bit. We hung up. I turned off the stove, sat on the kitchen floor, back against the fridge. Ethan called from upstairs. Mom, dinner ready yet? I wiped my face, stood, smiled. Almost, buddy. I knew the journey was long, but for the first time, I felt on the right path. About a week after Diane's blaming voicemail, when I thought things had calmed, Facebook buzzed with a notification. This time an event invite from Mom. Thompson Family Holiday Reconciliation Dinner.
Cover photo was my parents' house, still glowing with undecorated Christmas lights. Tree bright, table set with candles and white flowers. Description, syrupy sweet. After a challenging holiday season, we believe in forgiveness, second chances, and the power of family coming together. Join us for a special evening of reflection, good food, and renewed bonds. Nothing is more important than family. Heart, tree. Public guest list. Over 40 people. Neighborhood folks, Diane's church group friends, a few golf couples with Richard, Megan's family, of course, and Ryan. My name, missing. Not tagged, not privately invited. I scrolled comments. What a beautiful testimony of grace. The Thompsons are such an inspiration. Can't wait to celebrate your family's healing. Diane replied to each with hearts and God is good. I sat stunned in the kitchen, even doing homework upstairs.
This wasn't reconciliation. This was theater. Diane wanted to perform forgiving family for her usual audience, the people who always called her pillar of the community. If I didn't show, she'd tell her version. Difficult daughters, stormed out early, cut contact, broke everyone's hearts. No one would hear about Ethan by the dessert table. I screenshot and sent to Ryan. He replied instantly. You seeing this shit? Me. If we don't go, they own the narrative. Ryan, then we go. Together. The night of the event, I left Ethan with Mrs. Henderson, the kind neighbor who asked where he was on Facebook. I wore a simple black dress, hair tied back, minimal makeup. Ryan picked me up in his pickup truck, dark shirt, face tense. We drove in silence through Naperville streets, still with late Christmas lights. I don't know what I'll say, he admitted, pulling up.
I just know I can't let them keep performing. The house blazed, cars lined the street. Laughter and soft Christmas music, Oh Holy Night instrumental, spilled from inside. The living room packed, 30 people with wine glasses, appetizer plates, around a buffet of honey-glazed ham, scalloped potatoes, cranberry salad, and a new dessert table with pecan pie again, like a challenge. Diane spotted us first. She stood center room in a red dress, laughing with a church couple. Her eyes widened a second, real surprise, then switched to wide smile. "Sarah, Ryan, you came," she said loud enough for the room to turn, arms open like this was her dream. "I knew you wouldn't stay away forever." I didn't hug back. Ryan stood close, shoulders stiff. Richard appeared beside Diane, red wine in hand, forced smile. Megan near the tree, face pale but trying to smile.
Minutes later, as everyone settled around the long table, Richard tapped his glass for attention. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he said, warm voice familiar from golf outings. "This has been a difficult season for our family, but Diane and I are so grateful to have loved ones and dear friends under one roof again." Diane dabbed her eyes. "Family means everything to us. Sometimes misunderstandings happen, but blood is blood, and love always finds a way." Light applause. I felt Ryan tense beside me. He glanced at me. Now or never. Then stepped forward, voice loud enough to cut applause. "Funny you mention misunderstandings, Dad." Room went dead silent. Diane froze, hand on chest. Richard frowned.
Ryan continued, calm but firm. "Because on Christmas Eve, right here, Mom looked my nephew, Sarah's 11-year-old son Ethan, in the eye, took the last slice of pecan pie and said loud, 'Only real family gets the last slice,' then gave it to Megan's kids for seconds while Ethan stood there pretending it didn't hurt." Whispered spread. People near the sofa leaned in. Mrs. Henderson, elderly neighbor across the street, raised eyebrows. Ryan didn't stop. "When Sarah left with her son to protect him, you didn't call to apologize. You called 30 times because your lawyer said you might lose control of the Lake House Trust if Sarah didn't sign what you wanted." Diane found her voice, sharp. "Ryan, this is not the time or place. We can discuss family matters privately." Ryan laughed without humor. "Private is how we got here." "You get to hurt people in private, then parade this house like a perfect Christmas card for your friends." Mrs. Henderson spoke first, voice clear. "I was here that night. I heard what you said to that little boy. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That was cruel." A few nods. Diane flushed, voice trembling. It was a joke. You all know my sense of humor. Kids these days are too sensitive. I would never mean it. She turned to me. Tell them, Sarah. Tell them I didn't mean it. Every eye on me. I felt 16-year-old me wanting to shrink, smooth over, laugh. Yeah, Mom was just joking. But then I saw Ethan in my mind, standing by the dessert table, eyes glistening. I stepped forward, voice calm. No, you meant it. You've meant it my whole life. You meant it when you skipped Ethan's birthday for a lake house trip with Megan's family. You meant it when you told people he's not like the real grandkids. Christmas Eve was just the first time you said it out loud in front of my child. Richard slammed his glass down harder than needed. We built everything. This house, the lake house, the trust, for you ungrateful children. And this is how you repay us? I shook my head. You didn't build it for us. You built it for control. You only called me when the lawyer said my name was in the way, not once to ask how Ethan was after you humiliated him. The room's so quiet, I heard the gas fireplace crackle. Diane looked around at faces she handpicked as audience, realizing for the first time she wasn't winning. Eyes red, voice sharp. You're destroying our family. You did that yourself, I said, the moment you decided a child was expendable. Ryan put his hand on my shoulder. We're done here. We turned and walked out through the silent living room, leaving Diane and Richard in the center of their perfect lights and untouched buffet. No more applause, just the soft close of the door behind us. On the drive home, snow fell again. Ryan said nothing until parking at my house. I'm proud of you, he whispered. I nodded, throat tight. After that disastrous reconciliation dinner, my parents' house went suddenly quiet. No more voicemails, no emails, no long Facebook posts about forgiveness. Just heavy silence, like the calm after a big Midwest storm. Snow stops, everything freezes. I used that silence to finish what I started. Mr. Torres, Ryan's and my lawyer, sent a detailed summary of the trust and LLCs around the Lake Geneva lake house. For the first time in my life, I saw my name on paper, not as an inconvenience, but as a real key. The documents were clear. Nothing major, sale, refinance, transfer, could happen without every owner's consent, including mine. The money I contributed years ago for repairs had turned into legitimate rights, impossible to erase. With Mr. Torres's guidance, I signed documents formally separating my interest from anything my parents controlled day to day. My share of the lake house, if any income, and ownership would be locked separately, going straight to Ethan when he's old enough. No strings, no leverage. Ryan went further. As beneficiary in another trust part, he chose to delay or limit direct distributions to my parents. Nothing illegal, nothing vindictive. Just sober choices, making it impossible for them to keep living as if another check would always come for every new toy or party. When it was done, the numbers told a story my parents never imagined. The lake house no longer an easy ATM. The trust no longer a leash to yank us back when needed. I didn't take anything beyond what was already mine long ago. I just ensured no one could use my name without my agreement. Word must have reached them fast, because the next move wasn't an email or post. It was a knock on my front door, late on a gray Saturday afternoon in January, Naperville buried in snow. I checked the peephole. My parents on the stoop, Richard holding a tin of leftover Christmas cookies like a prop, Diane clutching a folded tissue, eyes already red. I opened the door just enough to block entry. Cold wind rushed through the crack. We need to talk, Diane started. Voice soft and shaky, not the shrill voicemail tone. We can't let lawyers come between us. This has gone too far. Richard nodded, rehearsed. Family doesn't sue family, Sarah. Family works it out privately, face to face. I almost laughed. I haven't sued anyone, I said. I just stopped letting you make decisions with my name behind my back. You called the lawyer before ever asking how your grandson was. Diane stepped closer, as if to touch my hand. We were upset. We were scared. Your father worked his whole life for that house, that lake house. We were just trying to secure retirement and something for you kids. You mean for the kids who play along? I asked. The ones who don't say no? Richard's jaw tightened. Diane's eyes flashed, tears shifting from sad to angry. You're throwing away your inheritance over a misunderstanding, one bad joke and a slice of pie. This is childish, Sarah. I stood still, cold biting. This isn't about a slice of pie, I said quietly. It's about every time you chose control over kindness and called it love. Every time you dangled money and called it sacrifice. Christmas was just the first time you said the quiet part out loud in front of my child. Diane's eyes flashed, tears, angry. You'll regret this when we're gone. One day you'll wish you hadn't poisoned your brother against us or taken our future away. I shook my head. Ryan's a grown man who finally opened his eyes. I didn't take your future. I just stopped letting you finance it with my son's dignity. You'll keep talking legacy like it's on paper. The only legacy I care about is the one Ethan carries, and I refuse to let him learn love means accepting whatever people do as long as they share DNA. Richard raised the cookie tin like a peace offering. Can we at least come in and talk to him? He's our grandson. My hand tightened on the door. He's my son. And until you can look him in the eye and apologize without excuses, you don't get access to him, my life, or my signature. Right now, you're not safe for him, and that matters more than any house, cabin, or trust. Diane's face crumpled at not safe, as if I'd accused something unforgivable. But she still didn't say the one thing that might matter. I'm sorry for what I said to Ethan. She just circled back, how much they gave, how hard they worked, how unfairly we're cutting them off. I took a breath. I'm not doing this anymore. You don't get to hurt my child and hide behind a legacy. You're not my legacy. You're my lesson, and I'm done repeating it. Before they could reply, I stepped back and closed the door, gently but firmly. I stood there, hand on the knob, listening to Diane sobbing outside and Richard muttering about ungrateful kids. Then footsteps faded, car door slammed, engine started, and drove away. Inside, quiet. No ringing phone, no pounding door, just Ethan upstairs humming to his game music, completely unaware that outside his world, the people who took his pie slice were finally learning what it felt like to be left with nothing they could control. I sat on the sofa, looking out at the snowy white. For the first time in years, I felt free. The weeks after I closed the door on my parents, nothing dramatic happened, and that was the strangest part. No more lawyer voicemails. No Facebook essays about forgiveness. No group texts guilting me into coming over. Just quiet. For the first time in my life, my phone could sit on the counter all day without becoming a grenade. At first, the silence felt wrong, like I should be doing something, reaching out, fixing it, playing the role I always played, swallowing pride so everyone else stayed comfortable. But every time that old instinct kicked in, I pictured Ethan at the dessert table, and it snapped me back. I started enjoying the peace. Mornings without missed call notifications. Nights without fearing a midnight ring. Ethan and I had real evenings, simple pasta dinners, board games, or sprawling on the sofa watching Disney Plus series. Our little Naperville house had never felt warmer, not from the gas fireplace, but because no one was remotely controlling our emotional temperature. A few days after the door incident, Ryan came over with 2 large pizzas from Lou Malnati's, the deep dish sausage Ethan loves, and a bag of Target popcorn. He wore an old hoodie, looking more relaxed than any time I'd seen him at my parents'. Brought cheap Christmas movies, he grinned, holding old Blu-rays and a USB of streamed films. We picked National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, the chaotic comedy about the worst possible family Christmas. Ethan excitedly dragged Ryan upstairs first to show his new Lego set I bought post-Christmas, a modern architecture kit he turned into Ethan's lake house. On the Lego roof, he attached a paper sign he made, "No mean grandparents allowed." Ryan looked at the sign, then me, eyes red but laughing so hard he wiped tears. "Kid's a genius," he told Ethan, ruffling his hair. "Uncle completely agrees." We ate pizza on the sofa, sauce on paper plates, cold soda cans sweating on the old coffee table. No crystal glasses, no fancy folded napkins. No one grading our family performance.
When the movie hit the part where Clark Griswold blew up the tree, all three of us laughed until our stomachs hurt. I realized I couldn't remember the last time I heard Ryan laugh freely. No glancing to see who was watching, no worrying about saying the wrong thing around parents. Mid-movie, the character gave a long speech about family is everything. Ethan turned to me, voice small but sure. "Does that mean you have to stay even when they're mean, Mom?" I paused the movie, pulled in close. "No," I said, choosing words carefully because this was the lesson I wish someone taught me young. Family is supposed to make you feel safe and loved, not tell you your place. Sometimes it's the people you share DNA with, sometimes not. Real family shows up when it counts, listens, apologizes when wrong. Blood alone doesn't earn a permanent pass to hurt you.
Ethan thought a moment, then nodded like I'd given him a better rule book. "So Uncle Ryan is real family?" Ryan laughed big, hugging Ethan. "Absolutely, buddy." That night, after Ryan left and Ethan slept, I sat at the kitchen table with hot tea, thinking about everything my parents meant by legacy. To them, legacy was houses, lake houses, accounts, and a story where they were heroes sacrificing for ungrateful kids. The funny thing was, the minute money stopped flowing their way, their version of love vanished too. They spent years telling me walking away would make me selfish and cold. Instead, on the other side of that closed door, I found warmth. Not from a big, crowded house and perfect tree, but from knowing I finally chose my son and myself over their approval. I heard through Mrs.
Henderson, who now often brings homemade brownies, and other neighbors, that my parents' social calendar got much lighter. A few closest friends still came around, the ones who believed Diane's version, but many quietly stopped. Church group no longer asked Diane to lead Bible study. Neighborhood wine nights dwindled. The lake house sat mostly empty that winter, not because they couldn't go, but because it was no longer a stage to parade the grandkids off talented. They still had their big house, things, carefully arranged wall photos, but the audience they built their identity around was smaller. For the first time in their lives, they had to sit in the quiet and face what they actually raised. I don't know if they ever will. Maybe someday they'll learn to say, "I'm sorry," without a but after. Maybe not. That's not my responsibility anymore.
My responsibility is the little boy sleeping upstairs and the lessons he takes from all this. I want him to grow up knowing love without respect isn't love. That you're allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, even if the world says family is everything. Protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's survival. I didn't burn my family to the ground. I just stopped standing in the fire and calling it home. The months that followed passed in a rhythm I'd never known. True peace. Naperville welcomed an early spring with tulips blooming along the Riverwalk. Ethan joined the school soccer team, and I focused on work and evenings just for us. Ryan dropped by now and then, bringing tickets to a Cubs game or just to drink beer and talk. We didn't mention my parents much, not because anger lingered, but because it simply wasn't necessary anymore. I often sat alone at the kitchen table in the evenings after Ethan was asleep, holding a mug of hot tea, thinking about the word legacy Diane and Richard loved. To them, legacy was tangible. The big Naperville house with 3-car garage, the lake house on Lake Geneva with private dock and boathouse, carefully calculated trust accounts to minimize inheritance tax, and a story where they were parents who sacrificed everything for ungrateful children. They once told me walking away would leave me with nothing, lose money, reputation, family. But the ironic and painful truth was that the moment money stopped flowing their way, their love vanished too. When the lake house couldn't be easily refinanced for party funds or trips, when the trust was no longer a leash to pull us back for signatures, they went suddenly silent. No more dinner invites, no more, "You should bring Ethan over." Just emptiness. I heard through Mrs. Henderson and other neighbors that my parents' social life thinned out. Church potlucks no longer featured Diane's famous green bean casserole. Coffee mornings with the neighborhood women's group dwindled.
A few old friends still visited, the ones who bought Diane's difficult daughter cut off family over one silly joke version. But many quietly withdrew after hearing the real story from the reconciliation dinner. The lake house sat nearly empty that summer, not because they couldn't go, but because it was no longer a stage for Diane to post grandkids' photos on Facebook captioned "blessed." No audience, no show. They still had their big house, expensive things, and carefully arranged mantle photos, but now many only featured Megan and her kids.
They had to sit in silence they were unaccustomed to, facing what they actually built. A family where love came with conditions, and when conditions weren't met, love evaporated. I don't know if they'll ever change. Maybe someday Diane will learn to say, "I'm sorry," without adding, "but you overreacted." Maybe Richard will realize legacy isn't in bank accounts, but in how you treat your grandson. Maybe not. That's no longer my responsibility. My responsibility is the 11-year-old boy sleeping in the next room, the boy who now laughs more freely, asks fewer "did I do something wrong?" questions, and confidently draws pictures of our family with just Mom, him, and Uncle Ryan. I want Ethan to grow up knowing love doesn't come with invoices, that he's allowed to set boundaries, allowed to walk away from repeated hurt, even from blood relatives.
That protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's the only way to survive and grow healthy. I didn't burn my family to the ground. I just stopped standing in the fire and calling it home. If you're reading this and it feels familiar, if you've been told to keep the peace while someone chipped away at your dignity, if family was used as a weapon to silence you, if you felt guilty just for wanting to protect yourself and your children, then hear this clearly. You're not crazy. You're not alone. And you have no obligation to keep standing in the fire just because someone else calls it home. There's a life on the other side of the door you close. It might be smaller, simpler, with fewer twinkling Christmas lights, but it's truly warm because no one there gets to hurt you without accountability. You deserve that, and your children do too.